I wanted to hop on to offer hopefully a brief reflection of the rest of the day. I did a video around over the lunch break. And so I just wanted to share with you some of what happened this afternoon. We reconvened at 1:30 and went till about 6:45. The big thing today was that our rules say that we need to finish all items with financial implications today. That really allows our General Commission on Finance and our General Counsel on Finance and Administration and our connectional table to take all of the things that are just petitions that would affect our money and incorporate that into the budget and their reports that are going to be brought before the body for Friday. So we will have financial pieces to vote on Friday, but they're going to be the budget, just the cumulative work that has been done before General Conference and any of the items with financial pieces that we have done here. I will say one of the things for me, it felt like, is that we spent a good bit of time trying to fix things we did wrong in petitions. And some of those things were in the course of the afternoon, things we'd done earlier in the day, or just things that had gone sideways, things that went wrong, or things that needed to be fixed. The Committee on Correlation, I shared earlier, there were some things that needed to be fixed because they either violated a different petition or two petitions were kind of in conflict with each other. In one case, a petition we passed was in conflict with part of our Constitution, so that needed to be fixed. And so as we went through the afternoon, motions were brought to fix those things. There were other items where legislative committees had acted on a motion without full information because they didn't have the report that was then presented to the general conference. So we did a lot of trying to make sure that the things we'd done before are good. And we also worked through the financial pieces that we had. Some of those financial pieces passed quickly. Again, before lunch, we passed the renewal of the study committee. Those sorts of things passed pretty quickly. But we did spend a good bit of time on a couple of things today. We spent a good bit of time talking about the base rate, the apportionment rate. In the Baltimore Washington Conference, we talk about local church apportionments. We call them mission shares, but essentially how much annual conferences are expected to pay to the general church to fund all of the things that we do together connectionally. And GCFA, our General Counsel on Finance and Administration, had proposed a significant cut from 3.2% down to 2.59, and it's with lots of decimal places. The Legislative Committee had amended that to 2.9. And then when it came to the floor, there was a minority report. And so if folks on the committee, if there are enough of them who say, we actually want to put forward a different proposal, it can be offered as a substitute amendment. That substitute amendment, which essentially brought the rate back down, was set at 2.6. So they kind of rounded it up. I guess they couldn't set it exactly at what the original petition was. It had to be a little bit different. So 2.6%. We went through a lot of amendments and discussion, and we had to bring pieces. It was just, we were kind of going through a lot of discussion and amendments and discussion. Where we ended was, and we almost referred it. We were just like a few votes. I think that was the vote we had today. That was a 4-vote difference, was whether or not to refer this back to GCFA, who had essentially given this to us to begin with. That was the second time this general conference that we voted that we did not vote to refer, which is astounding to me because, as I shared before, when that happened, there are a few things we like more as United Methodists when we're conferencing than to refer something. Send it to someone else. Let's study it. But we just barely declined to refer it because I think that we needed to resolve it. At one point, I stood at the microphone and asked, we were told we had our rules that we had to pass, we had to deal with our financial pieces. Do our rules allow us to refer this? In the end, speeches against referral prevailed. And again, by a very slim margin, we dealt with it so that we could get to a resolution. I have questions about how the process will work. Essentially, though, what was passed after several amendments was that for the next 2 years, the rate will be 2.6%. And then, so for 25, 26, and it can go to 2.9% in 27 and 28 if the annual conference pay at a 90% rate, which we've done as recently as 2018. That was a question that was asked. How long ago did we pay at 20%? I have questions about how budgets are going to be set because, as folks plan ahead, but that is what was approved. We also had a lot of discussion following the Jurisdictional Study Committee report that really looked at how do we decide how many bishops U.S. jurisdictional conferences will be. Lots of discussion on that. And then we thought we had voted on it, and there was a point raised that folks hadn't had enough chance to discuss, to offer amendments, that we had gone to the vote too quickly. One of the things that's important to understand about what it's like to be on the floor as a delegate. And I don't know if you probably aren't aware of this at home. I know even for those who are in the hall, folks don't necessarily realize, if you don't have a voting device in front of you, that we can't get in the pool as a speaker like just anytime we want to. They only open the pool for speakers when there's a motion before us. So for example, if somebody has to make a parliamentary procedure, or they want to make a motion that's not like a proper motion before us, you have to wait until the pool is open for a motion. So you're necessarily sometimes coming when you know it's going to be out of order, but you can't get into the pool any other time because the buttons they don't work. Like, they don't do anything if the presiding bishop hasn't opened the speaker pool, which they only do when there's a motion that we're processing. And so anyway, that caused some confusion. We had to step back and revisit some things that we were doing. And so there were, I'm going to encourage you to kind of read the petitions, but essentially that jurisdictions will have a minimum of 5 bishops, and for missional reasons, with the guidance of the Interjurisdictional Episcopacy Committee and other folks giving input, can determine missionally how many more bishops a jurisdiction might need and be entitled to. With discussion about jurisdictions paying additional if you're going to have more bishops then. And so we had what felt to me like complicated discussions because we had long amendments that we did not have the text in front of us. And some of our discussions were bringing us back to previous petitions, and it was hard to follow. I'm going to be honest. It was hard to follow as we were jumping around. Perhaps the most interesting thing of note about that is we've had an Interjurisdictional Episcopacy Committee. I'm not aware that they've done anything for any length of time. And I'm sure that somebody has a better idea of it, but already it was seeming as though they were going to have more to do, because there was talk about, as we limit bishops, that it was likely that we were going to have to move a bishop from a jurisdiction to another jurisdiction, so that we weren't electing more bishops. That as we kind of looked at like, okay, what's the minimum number of bishops? Because we've got to be mindful of the episcopacy fund, that we were going to have this committee, which really hasn't, as far as I know, done a whole lot to actually figure about swapping bishops from one to another, which is not something we've worried about before. But now with the petitions put before us, that committee instantly, like a committee that hasn't really been doing anything and has new members because of newly elected folks anyway, are going to have to assess how many bishops the different jurisdictions need. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that working team evolves, and to go from a group that really hasn't had a whole lot of responsibility, hasn't done a whole lot, is going to have a really significant voice in these decisions that people are going to feel very strongly about. In the midst of that, we did have nominations for a youth member on the General Commission on the General Conference. Our presiding officer, Bishop Scholl, I think towards the end of the session was trying to suggest to the body that perhaps he wasn't trying to, he told the body that the Judicial Council ruling was unclear and that somebody should ask for another declaratory ruling. The Judicial Council said, yes, look at the paragraph, nominate youth, but the paragraph, it's like a time warp. The paragraph like turns on itself because it says you have to be a delegate. Do you have to be a delegate? There are lots of questions. And so we may see a request tomorrow from somebody who's seeking more clarity from the Judicial Council, but we did have nominations for youth members. So at whatever point we're able to vote on the General Commission on General Conference and youth members, we have names of persons who have been nominated. So we did get through all of the pieces that have financial implications. And so that's good, but we didn't really get through a whole lot else other than consent calendar. So we have a lot more to do. So we're going to need to continue to be working efficiently tomorrow to keep moving through pieces. I know it's Wednesday, we've got a few days, but we have a lot of petitions that we need to work through. And some of them are going to really be ones that people feel very strongly about, and they're going to want to have the time to have discussion and to have debate. Two other things of note. We did, in the consent calendar, remove the restriction against using funds for any ministries with LGBTQIA persons. We removed that restriction on the consent calendar. And we also, at the end of our time together, even though we were bumping right into the dinner hour, we got to celebrate the passing of the gavel. It's a crystal gavel, which seems like a very impractical gavel, but it looked very pretty. A crystal gavel passed from Council of Bishop Presidents as Bishop Tom Bickerton passed it to Bishop Tracy Smith Malone. And so we celebrate her beginning time as the president of the Council of Bishops. And so it was wonderful. There was some concern where I was sitting that maybe we were just racing towards the end and we weren't going to get to do that. It was scheduled for earlier in the day. So that was really awesome and really momentous and incredible to get to be there. So those were the happenings for today. And as we move into our work together tomorrow, we begin at 8 a.m. We continue into plenary. We've got reports scheduled and all of those things. But again, we have a lot of petitions that we're going to need to work through. So thank you for your prayers. And we look forward to seeing what God is able to do tomorrow. I do hear that some of the removal of the restrictive language pieces will be coming before us tomorrow. So you'll want to make sure you're following United Methodist News Service, following my page, following other folks with updates as all of that unfolds. Have a wonderful evening.